All right, so this is Todd Atkins. I'm here with Dean Tedder from Two Party Podcast, and today we're just going to kind of talk, just two podcasts, I guess, kind of talking about different experiences we've had doing this. And Dean, I guess I want to ask you, like, when did you kind of start deciding to do something like this?
Well, I thought about doing this back in, I want to say about February or March, but I really didn't. First off, I hadn't done any research on it. I just thought, well, I'm just going to be some random guy talking on, and then where do I talk? Where do I get an audience? So I started doing the research back in like March, I want to say, and I've always been recording. I've kind of set up a home studio like we discussed earlier, and so I really, I think it was about August. I had surgery. I want to say end of June, July. I want to say July, middle of July, I had surgery. And as soon as I had surgery, I had a lot of time on my hands instantly, not just with the pandemic going on, but also just I had to heal up. So I just had this surgery and I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to spend more time sitting down in the studio, getting down what I need to do. And then I kept researching. So it's been about since, I think this 2 weeks before, so about middle of August, I was like, okay, I'm going to launch September and I'm going to get this thing off the ground. And by that time, I already started kind of doing some guest interviews. I already started kind of reaching out to a lot of people that I know through the media, through journalism. I do freelance journalism as well. So I do a lot of reporting and writing on my own. And so that was one of my things is like, I wanted to bring a show. I wanted to bring news and current events, but I also wanted to be able to reach out to good guests. So it was really right around, I would say, honestly, right the first week of September that I just started throwing up unedited, guest interviews or unedited just news broadcasts, kind of like news breakdowns I do. And that was about the start of it.
Now, was this because you listened to other podcasts or?
There was several reasons driving it. Number one was listening to other podcasts and enjoying what they say. But if you've ever like, and I know you know this experience, like if you ever listen to another podcast and they're having a discussion or it gets really heated, you get in a moment of that podcast where you stop and you really listen and you go, come on, say it. You kind of get to the point where you're like, man, is he going to say it? And you kind of get into the podcast, what they're talking about. And you kind of feel like you're right there having that conversation, but then they don't say what you want to hear. And you're like, oh, he didn't ask him, or, oh, he didn't tell him. And that's kind of when the idea started going through my head. Like, I want to be able to ask the questions that people aren't asking. And I want to kind of ask people, I want it to be an open dialogue. I want it to be an unfiltered. I don't want to edit everything and spend a lot of time on the editing as much as I want people to know who my guest is organically. And everything, the bloopers, the bad takes, the every bit of it, I want to put it out there. I want them to see who I am directly. I want them to see who the guest is directly. But that was the first driving point. And then the second driving point is, about 2 years ago here in Bixby, which is where my home's located, I got involved in a lot of the local politics. I used to go to the city council meetings. I used to annoy the crap out of half the city staff. Everybody down here now knows my name. But I used to go to the city council meetings, just try, when me and my wife first bought our house here, I wanted to get involved in the community. I wanted to do something. And my wife went to school here. She kept telling me, stop, don't, these people know me. But I wanted to be a part of my community, and my wife was like, please don't embarrass me. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you married me and I'm that guy that's gonna talk and meet people. And so as I started getting involved, I started seeing city issues and I started seeing just places where the city and the community could improve. And so I started speaking out and then I started speaking with residents. And the more I got into doing that, I realized there was a real need, as Bixby is a small community, but it's a well-off community, I should say, but it's a small community, and it is developing faster than any area in around the Tulsa area. And so I decided, like, what could I do to help generate revenue or help bring things to the community? So I started a Unity Social. It's called Unity Social Bixby. There's a Facebook page, there's a Facebook group, and so what I did is we did a one-time event. I was going to keep doing it annually, but we didn't get a lot of feedback after the second year or the first year doing it. So we basically, at our cost, we went and we rented an event place downtown in Bixby, and we literally offered, and I flyered from 101st and Memorial all the way down South Bixby as far as I could go to every business. I walked and I went door to door, drove some of them. And I handed out flyers to invite every business owner to this event. And I thought this is a great opportunity for the citizens to get to know the business owners and the business owners to generate some revenue, maybe new customers. And that's the second part of what drove me into wanting to do the podcast. I wanted to do a podcast where I could drive my community to bring some unity, but drive the community to promote its local businesses, to promote people that have talents that work outside out of their home. They don't have brick and mortar stores. They don't have online presence. Those are the people I wanted to reach with Unity Bixby, Unity Social. And then that's what I wanted to reach with the platform here is I really wanted, and I still, that's what I do. I really want local businesses to succeed. I really want to build those relationships with local businesses. Sure, we have a podcast show. We want sponsorship. We want to be able to, offer people sponsorship slots and kind of help pay for some of the offset of a cost of a show. But at the end of the day, what we really wanted was to give back, especially in the middle of this pandemic, give back to the small businesses and the citizens of the community, because who's the biggest person profiting right now? It's not the small business. It's, Walmart staying open. It's all the big box and the big corporations that have been able to sustain in this pandemic. And so lately, as you've seen, because we started talking when I started kind of announcing, doing some business promos on Instagram and I do some live videos on Facebook and I'm inviting everybody. I think I even ran an ad on one of the Tulsa sales things. Just inviting any local business owner to come on the show, be a guest. I'll come to your, if you're a restaurant or whatever, I'll come to your restaurant. We'll take a few pictures and do a quick interview. And then we'll put it up on the show just to get you some promotion. And so that was my second driving force. And my third driving force really is probably, as you can tell, and my wife tells me and reminds me all the time, I love to talk. And I love to talk with people. I love to, as much as I'm an introvert, I'm really extrovert when it comes to people, when I'm around people. When I'm at home, I just want to be left alone and enjoy my what I pay for at my house. But when I'm out in public, I enjoy people. I enjoy new discussions. I enjoy walking straight up to a stranger to help them and then engaging them in a conversation that maybe they weren't going to have that day. And those are things I genuinely in my heart enjoy doing. And that's really what drove me to get this platform going.
Now, the stuff you're doing in Bixby, was that with the chamber or how was that working out?
Oh man, I didn't work. I spoke with the chamber, but I wasn't a member of the chamber. And our business, Time Warp Delivery, we're not a member of the chamber. We mainly do a lot of our work in Tulsa. But what I did do is I reached out to them. And at the time, I was still kind of, I had already gone through like a year of going to city council meetings and pissing everybody off. The mayor, every council person that sat on the seat, I challenged. The city manager, I was being the thorn in the side, but I was also being the squeaky wheel that needed some grease. And so I kept talking for people that couldn't show up at these meetings and people that couldn't speak up. And so I started showing up there. And so I did go to the chamber and I spoke with them. And at this time I had stopped kind of going to meetings, but I had actually started having open dialogue and communication with some of the council members that I was calling out. And so we started building on that relationship. I actually had one that actually I called him and he literally said, I was like, how are you doing? He's like, I'm doing fine, fixing to call my attorney to sue you. And I'm like, okay, well, what are we suing me about? And so that was the dialogue. And that day in that phone call, that dialogue opened up into, me and him being good friends and me and him talking now. And communicating, like I have his cell phone number, I can call him anytime or text him, and so we opened that dialogue, but it was a lot of misinformation and miscommunication. But yeah, I did reach out to the chamber, not having to be a member, but basically just letting them know I'm wanting to do a community event that I'm inviting everybody to. It's open doors. We ended up having when we did Unity Social, we ended up having probably 50 to 60 booths show up. I mean, we ended up to the point where people showed up and we didn't really have room for them. Because I didn't really, I planned the event and I planned everybody showing up. We catered food, we had everything set up, but I did not, expect the turnout because I had a lot of people kind of cut out and I had a lot of people that were like, well, we might be there, just hold us a spot. And I'm like, well, if someone shows. So we had people set up about 50, 60 booths promoting their businesses. At the time, there was a Ward 5 campaign going on with Jeremy Shadrick and Brad Gerard. And I forget the other one, I think Amy Thompson, and then there was another lady. So that at the same time this was going on, there was also this little campaign, and two of them showed up and they represented, their campaign. And Jeremy, who just passed away, he was the guy that got hit by that Uber driver. He became a good friend of mine through all that. But we held that event, and it was really cool because there was a good turnout. We had Scott's Hamburgers, which was across the street from the little event center. They showed support and were catering food, and anybody that came over got a discount. There was just a lot of really neat, and it had like the day of, just in the moment, the community came together. We had a few issues come up, and citizens were running out the door to find help to fix the problem. So it was just a really cool event where it was exactly what we wanted. We wanted unity within the community, and it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in the Links in Bixby before I bought my house in Coweta, so I'm kind of familiar with that area.
Yeah, kind of how the dynamic of it works then. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to go to Charlie Young Park to some of those events and stuff. So
yeah.
But what were the issues that Bixby was having that you had a problem with?
So, and you can Google, pardon me, a lot of it, I'm not even sure I should safely bring it up anymore.
Okay.
But I will say, originally we started with, at the time there was a development going in South Bixby. There was property there that was bought, and this was a big issue. This was in the news.
Was that the Spirit Bank?
It wasn't Spirit Bank. Now that's a whole nother issue, and I stayed out of that one. I said, my wife even was like, "Don't get involved, please." And so I stepped away from that one. But when I first got in it, and just a little background, I joined a Facebook group about Bixby. There was a lot of people on there chiming in about the good and the bad and what was going on. And this is about the time we bought our house and kind of transitioned here into Bixby. And so, my wife, she could care less about the politics that goes on in the city. She really genuinely she's not wired that way. And me, I'm wired to where I have to know and want to know what I can do for the community, what the community is doing. Are we doing good in our community? Does the city leaders need help? And I'm one to step right up and do it. So I literally got in this group, started talking with some people who had issues with the city, and didn't realize at the time their issues with the city partially were personal, and partially were basically their political viewpoint of what should or should not happen in their city. And so I kind of jumped on this whole bandwagon with these people and was like, first there was a new development and people were pissed that the people sold. It was some old family property. And I think it was Conrad. It might've been Conrad Farms, one of those. So it was a bigger property, and people were just mad at the family for selling, and then mad because it was being developed into neighborhood. And so I kind of chimed in on all that, and I was, okay, well, what do we need to do to kind of fight this, And so I stepped up to the city, started asking questions. A few of the members in the group would step up, but nobody wanted to be the voice. Nobody wanted to be the face or the voice. And I said, I have no problem being the target. I'll be the whipping post. Let's do this. And so I kind of started helping with this movement that was basically kind of almost anti-city. And in the midst of it all, it went on. And we got to a point where some of the citizens in the group were wanting an investigation, an internal investigation of the city, of the manager, of the council members, of a bunch of just getting a lot deeper, bringing in, some of the law enforcement agencies to really look into the city and what's going on with the dealings. And that's what we did. And so we had one member who was going to do it. And I felt that if you were going to do it, you needed to do it now while we had some publicity and spotlight. And everybody just kind of was dragging their feet. And I said, you know what, I'll do it. And I sat down in my office one day, and I went to every agency and emailed, and I did all the research I could do. I dug up a file of paperwork about this thick, about almost 1.5 inches thick, of paperwork that showed kind of conflicts of interest for each member. That sat on the council, that showed where the city manager could potentially be doing better at some of the projects. And now, you hear right now on the news, there's the big downtown projects all over the news because it's such a disaster down there right now. And you have right now, that's the big topic. And then after I got, that started going on at the tail end of all of that became there was one of the city council candidates that decided to run for a position in Tulsa County. And things started getting more transparent as far as people, I spoke with some of the other council members, and they're like, no, some of your information's wrong. You're not getting the proper information. You're getting this information from this other council member, aren't you? And then the other one would say the same thing. So, then you got 4 council members saying this is all misinformation and we've heard it before from this guy's mouth. And sure enough, he was in the group. And so I was like, maybe I need to start looking at is their side of things really the right perspective? Is this really happening the way these people are saying? Or is it just something where the city's hands are kind of tied on things, which most cities are, especially big cities? And so I started, as much as I dug up a lot of information and I submitted it to every legal agency, election boards, the investigative board, OSBI, Tulsa County, I submitted paperwork and emails as well as documents showing conflicts of interest that could be potential legal charges. And I submitted all of it. And the only one that ever got back with me was OSBI, and they said they were investigating it. And I never really, after I got the one letter back from them, I never heard another word. And so I just left it at that. Well, at this time, everybody in this group gets mad at me because I jumped the gun and it was basically going to be their glory. And I took the glory because I just started doing it. And then the next thing I know, I start getting, the post approval. Anything I want to post in the group or talk about in the group becomes, I got to get an approved post, and then it wouldn't get approved. And then we had a private group on top of that. And even in the private group, eventually I got deleted from the private group. And it was like, okay, so these people aren't really representing what they say they are. These people had me fooled. And so I reached out to Brian Guthrie. I reached out to Robin. I reached out to, at the time it was Paul. Paul and me have never really had a good communication since. And I've tried to reach out again and again, and I've called him and he's told me to call me. I never get a return call. And I guess, that there's some things you can't fix, but he's still, I believe, Ward 3. And so I reached out, and even to the Mayor Easton, I reached out to him. So I've reached out to all these people, and we had a conversation. I apologized for my accountability in it. They apologized for anything that looked shady. And then we agreed that we would move on from that, and any other future communications or any other city issues, I could come to them directly and ask questions. And we did, and we have. And I've, since then, 2018, I think, is when this was all really going on. I've been able to communicate well with Brian, who's now the mayor here. I've been able to communicate with any of them with questions I have, or city issues I have, or if I'm driving down the road and I hit a pothole, I can say, hey guys, I'll submit it to the city, but I'm letting you know in your ward, here's a pothole, that needs to be fixed before someone gets a flat or gets into an accident. So it really changed the dynamic. And then shortly thereafter, the next topic became the water bill issue, which everybody in Bixby's heard about the water bill issue. So I jumped right on board with that, and we ended up getting one of the local news stations picked the story up, did an interview with me. Shortly thereafter, I ended up at the city council, presented my facts from after that interview. They had a big thing, and then they had a second meeting that basically was they were going to go through all the city of Bixby and change out the water meters. And so to me, while the city was already working on that stuff in the background, I feel that I got results by pushing the issue, being the squeaky wheel. And so at the water meter issue, they were, when we had that meeting, they presented their side of what they were doing and why they were doing it. And a lot of citizens showed up that had high water bills. And I came and represented a few citizens that couldn't make it. And we presented them, and we all hashed it out, and we kind of talked it out. And at the tail end of it all, we all agreed that we could agree with them spending the millions of dollars they were wanting to spend to change out water meters. It made sense, which at first we were all kind of in opposition. But we were hoping that at the end of it, they changed the water meters, all of them out in the whole city, and then that maybe we would have less complaints or high water bills. In the midst of doing that, I think it's been a little over a year now. I think all the water meters have been in. Haven't heard anything up until like 2 weeks ago. People started chiming in about high water bills again. And so whether it got resolved or not, I don't know, but it definitely helped up the infrastructure as far as getting everybody new meters. So at this point, if you have a high water bill, you can then call the city. They will kind of, I guess what they'll do is kind of they'll pay half of a high bill. So if it's a high bill and they find out it's on their end, they'll pay half of it. So there's some resolution now, whereas before people were calling the city and saying, hey, I've got a high water bill. And it was like, well, it's your fault. You must have a leaky toilet, or you must have this, and they kind of just passed the buck, and you had to pay your bill or it was shut off.
Yeah, I think they're doing that now in Coweta, where they're replacing all the meters, and people are kind of having the same complaints.
Yeah, and it's one of those where you think, well, they're replacing this meter, so it should be a better thing, and it can be. But if you have, prime example, me and my wife bought a house. It's 1969. When we bought it, it sat on the market for a year. The granddaughter of the owner had lived here previously. They let it go. Her and her boyfriend, the AC duct lines were on the ground. The plumbing was leaking underneath, and they lived in it like that and never fixed one thing. And then when we bought it, all of that needed fixed. And we did have a little high water bill when we first moved in, and there was a lot of the old toilets that were messed up, that were leaking or running all the time. There was a couple pipes that were leaking and finally burst later that we caught. So there was, we actually were able to see from our end that we were getting a high water bill because there was little things in our crawl space and little things with our toilets and stuff going on that most homeowners wouldn't know. And a lot of people are like, well, I'm working from 9 to 5. I don't see why my water bill is so high. Well, if your toilet's running all day from 9 to 5, then that's one way your water bill will be real high. So, and with the water meter thing, a lot of people were kind of like, well, we don't want our taxpayer money spent on this. It was like 1.5 million or something crazy. And they had a projected date that they were going to start changing them and get them done. And it was actually really reasonable. And if you think about it, that's really not a lot of money to upgrade the infrastructure of water, the plumbing and stuff for the city. That's really not a lot of money because those meters aren't cheap. And in my opinion, I think it was a good thing, and I think it worked out. I do think a lot of people are very quick, and I was one of them, very quick to jump on the city, very quick to just be, if something goes wrong in my life or my community, I'm immediately going to attack the city. Why not? I mean, it's kind of the nature of our society, point the blame at someone else. And, I'm glad I took a step back now, and I'm able to communicate with these people easier and better, and really understand that while I may feel it's their fault, there's more to it. I mean, there's a lot of, obviously, us as citizens don't see all the paperwork and stuff going through city managers' hands, or all the research and development and all the different surveying that's going on throughout cities. We don't know those things unless we're pulling up public record constantly, or if we're at those meetings.
So, as two people that kind of live in the surrounding area of Tulsa, maybe you could talk about some things about Tulsa, or maybe some of the good and bad of Tulsa, or maybe some things you'd like to see.
For sure. So, one of the main things I notice, and I guess this is partially owning a construction business and working construction throughout Tulsa. We work with a lot of different property management teams. I honestly think, one of them handles about 200 homes across Tulsa. We deal with another one that's over 150 homes in Tulsa that we personally deal with. And then we do a lot of remodel and stuff like that across all of Tulsa. So I literally at any given moment in the past, since 2015, have visited, seen, almost been in every neighborhood and worked on at least a house in every neighborhood in some capacity, whether it's changing a door lock or changing out a kitchen and bathroom. What I like that I'm seeing right now is, and a lot of people, kind of don't like buying them, and a lot of people do. And without having to get real political about it, I think some of the things he's doing, which I've under research, I've found that some of it started before him taking office. But what I find is a lot of what he's doing in the north side, cleaning up, a lot of what the money he's investing on the north side of town of Tulsa is good. And I've worked over there. I've literally, one of the last houses, we were laughing about it the other day. One of the last houses we did over there in Tulsa, live PD was on. So we were literally in this house working. There's a house across the street, and there's literally, my painter calls me. I sent him over there to do an estimate. I was at home. The painter goes over there and he calls me shortly after he gets there, and he goes, "Hey, is this the house with the drug addicts across the street?" And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, there's a guy in the driveway shooting up, and there's another lady smoking meth in the driveway." And I, "What?" And this is like 2:00 in the afternoon. I go, wait, is it the house with the broken windows? He's like, yeah. And I go, oh, well, they're squatting there. They're not supposed to be there. And so we kind of had a little laugh about it. As sad as it is, we had a little laugh about it. And so throughout the course of working that job, we had a drug dealer who made himself known 2 houses over from that house. And he'd come over and would ask us, "How long are you guys going to be working today? You're running my traffic off." And at the very first week of it, it was, he would literally tell us, "You guys need to get out of here before the sun goes down, or you're going to have problems." And so it was, that was our, this is literally us just trying to work, legally do it, 9 to 5, just get a job done for a client. And that was our experience over there. What I've seen is that community, that area directly right around, and it's about 51st and Hartford area. Even that area right there, which is a very hard neighborhood and a lot of low income Section 8 in that area, is getting cleaned up. It's, you know, I'm looking down, you can look down the street from this one house that we did and we finished out. And even the guy across the street with the people squatting had come over to me. The guy, I guess he's not the owner, but he somehow is handling the estate. So he had come over and he knew the issues and he felt bad about kicking the squatters out because there's children there. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a reason to kind of get them help and get them out, you know. But he did, he came over and we had a conversation. He's like, look, I'm trying to clean this up. You know, I'm just handling the estate, but we're trying to clean this up. But you could look down, you could stand at the end of this driveway and you could look down either side of the street and you'd see homes that were repossessed or boarded up where contractors were coming in and working on them. These were being auctioned off, sight unseen, people just buying them. And what was more inspiring to me was that a gentleman that bought the house next door and owned the house next door, he stopped by to check on his tenant. And while he's over there, he comes over to us. And so we engage in a conversation and he tells me he's an investor and he only invests in his community, in that community where he grew up. And he buys these homes for, you know, whatever he gets them at auction for. He puts a little bit, fixes them up to where they're clean, nice, and Section 8, you know, affordable, not, I mean, he does a really good job on them. And then what he does is he doesn't just offer them a house to rent, he offers them a house to own. And so what he does is he offers them, if they stay with him 10 years, he hands over the note. So if they pay rent, everything goes smooth. This guy takes his investment and makes a homeowner out of that tenant. Absolutely inspiring, absolutely amazing guy. And he owns, you know, several dozen of them over there and several dozen around Tulsa area, but that's his main focus of what he does. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of people get these investment properties, they hang on to them just for the profit. And a lot of people get these investment properties and they get them to flip. And this guy, his intention was genuine, where he wants to see that community get better than what it was when he grew up. And it is now. And so that's one of the things I like to see in Tulsa, and one of the things that I've noticed that are going on. The other thing that I've noticed, is I love seeing the districts coming up. I love seeing the Rose District. I like seeing the Brady District. I love seeing Cherry Street doing what Cherry Street's doing. These are all things that bring revenue and commerce. And a lot of people don't understand that that's what it takes to run a city. And a lot of these are people that have probably had a dream to be a business owner their whole life, and some of them just got the opportunity to do so. Now, a lot of it's not the case. A lot of it's people that have big money and can just afford to put these places in. But for a lot of the businesses down there, you know, that's why I always encourage to support small business. You don't know the story behind it, and usually it's somebody who has struggled and fought and saved, fixed their credit, whatever it took to get. They just kept fighting until they got to the point where they could open doors on what that was their dream. And so that I love seeing. I love seeing when you go to Cherry Street and you walk it and a new business pops up that you didn't see last time you were there. You're like, wow, that wasn't there. When did that come in? And it's encouraging because it just shows that in the middle of a pandemic, there's still growth. Rose District, what they did in BA is amazing. You know, BA is a good community. They've got a lot of people there that have good money. So why wouldn't it be a good community? But when you add a district like that, you're inviting neighboring communities to come in. You're inviting, you know, there's a little, I call it a gray area between Bixby and Broken Arrow, where they kind of police each other. You know, you kind of know where I'm talking about. So that little gray area, there's houses and communities in there. There's even, like, you know, some of the older houses that people want to see gone, but they're in that gray area. So they don't have a place to go. So when they put into the Rose District, a lot of those people now, they go down there versus trying to come down to Bixby's downtown, which, you know, even if it was completed right now, it's still kind of a drive for them. So BA's closer. Those are the other things I love to see. I love to see when some of the small businesses come up and pop up. And then I love to see that these districts are coming up, which is supporting not just the commerce and the community as far as like tax revenue, but it's giving people a place to go to get outside of the everyday stress, the everyday, you know, we're dealing with a pandemic. You've got a high depression rate, high anxiety, people that suffer post-traumatic. You've got all these crazy things that have happened that we haven't experienced before. And there's a place to go now that kind of restrictions are a little better. And it's never really, you know, it's not been restricted really bad here in Tulsa as far as I'm concerned, but there's still a place to go. One of the things I just heard a couple weeks ago that kind of hit me, and I haven't really talked a lot about it, is There's a big push to clean up. There's a group that's trying to really push to clean up all the homeless and get these people out of town, get them out of downtown area. And while I kind of see their point to it, because if you drive down, I'm an inspector for the election board, so I drive down there to pick my stuff up all the time, each election, which I'll be doing here in a few weeks. You drive down there, and even when you go drop everything back off the night of the election, there's people just racked up on the side of the road down there. And I mean, when I say racked up, I mean, I've drove down there a dozen times, and it's the same people. Like, that's their house. That's where they stay. You can find them there 24/7. And it's not a good scene for a city. And it's not an encouraging thing in a community to have a location. It's while you want to support the homeless and try to give them help and resources. And I know all of the main resources are in downtown. And that's one of the problems people don't see, is that the reason all of them are flocked to downtown is because that's where the resources and homeless shelters are.
Right. I mean, if you put everything down, that's where they're going to be. I mean,
correct. Why not follow the resources? And so while this group is doing that, that's what kind of hit me, is like, well, that's kind of where they have to go if they want help, because no one else is going to help them. Otherwise, you see them flood the intersections everywhere else in town. And to me, we need that help. We need that assistance. The homeless is an issue. And I think while there is resources in churches and you know, there's John 3:16 that does a great job, and there's other shelters down there that does a great, amazing job. There's more the community can do. I think there's more that Bynum can do. I don't think it's about cracking the hammer down and just basically ostracizing these people that are displaced. And the other thing to keep in mind is a lot of people don't want to be, they don't want to be told what to do. A lot of these people by choice are homeless. There's one guy in particular, you see him, he used to be at 51st and Memorial. Now you see him a lot at 71st and Memorial. And he always is wearing his Carhartts, and he's got long dreads. And if you've ever seen this guy, he does not want to be bothered. He does not want to be messed with. I drove up to him one day to offer him, a friend of mine owns a bus ministry locally, getoutofthebus.org. He has that double-decker red bus. They go around, feed the homeless. Every Thursday they meet up. I went up there one day to hand the guy, because I knew where he stayed, and I went to hand him one of the flyers, just like, hey, call John, you know, he'll give you some assistance anytime you need something, you know. And he took it and he threw it like a Frisbee, and he goes, I don't want that. You got $20? And I'm like, well, yeah, sure, I got $20. And he's like, well, just give me $20 to get out of here. You're standing on my front porch, you know. And he was serious. And I go, well, you know, I said, I could give you that, but I was like, I really want to, you know, I could give you $20 cash, and that's a temporary fix to your day, but I'd like to offer you some help that's long-term. Maybe you can reach out to John, or maybe we can get you in touch with some of the community leaders and maybe get you on your feet. He goes, I am on my feet. He goes, I can go shower at my family's house, and this is where I stay. And if you don't want to give me $20, get out of here. Otherwise, you get out of your truck and I'll whoop your ass. And that's exactly what he said to me. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So I drive off, and the guy that's with me, Dennis, he was with me at the time, and he says, he goes, I was going to tell you not to pull up. That guy's been here on the streets for over 15 years. I've seen him. And he said, and he's been the same way, and he'll take money from you, but he ain't trying to change. And I said, well, you know, that's between him and God, and me and God. You know, I gave him $20, whatever he does with it's his choice. Mm-hmm. But we do have a problem here that needs addressed. And I think it's not just, you know, it's not just Tulsa. It's every major city has a homeless. At some degree, there's homeless people. In the midst of this pandemic, I'm sure if we were to look at statistics, I'm positive we'll see higher numbers in those homeless, because of people maybe not being able to pay rent, getting displaced that way. No matter what city and government implemented, you know, programs they have to help with rent, there's still people that lost their homes or lost a place to live. So while there's, you know, there's a million ways we could come up with a solution and speak about it, it's taking action. And so, you know, that's another big topic I see locally that's kind of hit me lately is I'm like, what do? You know, do you just continue to push these people to the next neighboring town, or do you start implementing laws where you're making them criminals because they don't have a home? You know, and on some level, you know, some that are dangerous, some that have drug issues, yeah, you kind of got to keep the community safe by implementing some kind of restrictions. But at the end of the day, that's only temporary. You know, if you're arresting someone to put them in jail because they're causing a problem at a store and they're homeless, they're going to bail out and they're going to get out and they still have nothing. and while I'm not all for giving people free stuff, I've worked hard my whole life. I'd like to see people work hard to get to where they need to be. You still have to have some sort of a support system in place for people like that. And a lot of them we know too are probably mentally challenged. So, there could be mental, whether it's depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, there's other things that go on. And anytime you're dealing with addiction, you're automatically dealing with a mental issue. In my opinion, that's kind of just how I feel about it. But that I like to see. I like to see a lot of how the city's building up. I love to see that. As far as like with Bixby and the development in Bixby, we're literally, my house is off Memorial, but we're right on the line where South Tulsa and Bixby meets up. And we have literally just living here for 5 years now. We literally can sit on our front porch and watch how the developments come to us. And it's interesting to see. And while a lot of people don't like the change and don't want the development, I see a need for it. You have high population, you have a high number of people and high population of people just flooding into Bixby and flooding into neighboring communities, and you have to have the revenue. What I'd like to see in the south part of Tulsa is, and I've said it for a while, my wife keeps saying it, you have a lot of people that are in Bixby and in these smaller communities over here. I'd love to see the Tulsa bus system, which it is, Bixby's Tulsa County. I'd love to see the bus system run this far. I know they just started a program over there off 61st Peoria where they have buses that run more frequently and off Riverside to kind of help the people down there get to work and get to jobs. I would love to see buses come further than, I want to say they stop around 91st. And that's the area you can hop one. I'd love to see the buses come further south. I'd love to see people at least up to the downtown area of Bixby be able to hop a bus and go catch a job in town if they don't have a license or that's another way you can help the community is just general transportation, public transportation. There's Uber and all these other things, but if you're working for a minimum wage or you don't really have the money for it and you're paying your rent and you're just making ends meet, you're not going to be able to pay Uber Monday through Friday to go to work. So those are just kind of some of the things I think about. As a whole, what I'd love to see in our community right now is the unity. We have not just the election, not just party line, Democrat, Republican, but in general, the racial issues that come up. I mean, there's so much in our community, and a lot of it's media driven. It's 100%. If you turn the news off for about a month, you'll be amazed how your life changes. And I stick with it because I kind of do news updates. I like to keep up on current events, but at the end of the day, if you just kind of turn the news off for a while and quit paying attention to the news and be genuine and intentional out in the real world with people, holding doors, smiling, giving compliments, if you go to the drive-through, pay for the meal behind you and drive off, things like that, being intentional and genuine. You'd be surprised how you don't see all of this media topics. You don't see the racism as much as people say it's happening. And then there's people that are like, well, if you don't see it, then you're just part of it. Well, how does that work? I think there's so many issues that I'd love to see our community in Tulsa stand up and overcome in order to set an example for neighboring states or the nation. I think it's a very strong message when you have an entire city or community come together and say, we're not falling for it. We love each other. We're helping each other. There's nobody here that we leave out. And that's kind of where, it's a pipe dream. It's like when they always ask the beauty pageant girls, what do you want? And they say world peace. That's my pipe dream. Is I really would love to see a community come together, put all biases aside, political and everything, and really just speak to the heart of each other. Be intentional in conversations, be genuine. Don't just, in small talk, hey, how you doing? Okay, have a great day. Be genuine. Ask that person how they're genuinely doing. And I've been doing, if you've watched this past couple of weeks, I've been doing a few lives. I've been speaking a lot on helping others. And I've been speaking a lot on what we have this month, which is mental health awareness. To me, that means so much because as a person who suffers with depression and anxiety, former addict, former alcoholic, I've been down the road. I know everything about all this craziness, and it's part of who I am. It's part of who made me who I am. And so I'm a huge advocate for not just the unity of the community, but getting to a place where we are helping others enough to where we're sustaining the mentally ill. We're sustaining people that are depressed. We're sustaining people, and at the very least, taking them out of the moment. Just for you to hold the door for someone, smile at them, and give them a compliment at a QT is enough to take someone who just left their house from an abusive spouse, who's just trying to go to the store and maybe get something, or maybe get a pack of cigarettes for their spouse or something, but they know that they got to go back to that environment. And you don't know who's dealing with what. You open that door, and for what split second, giving a smile or holding that door is enough to take that person who's being abused at home, maybe, or maybe is the abuser, out of the element they're in for a second. And it's a matter of, I like to compare it to like this is, imagine you have someone who's completely suicidal, has been for a while, is potentially planning it. If you saved their life for 1 minute, that 1 minute that you held the door, the 1 minute you complimented on the outfit they're wearing, the 1 minute that you gave them a smile, or the 1 minute you said, "Hey, how you doing today?" That's 1 minute that person lived longer. That's 1 minute you kept them from doing something that potentially affects everyone around them that cares about them. And that's something I'm a big advocate for, and I'd love to see our city step up like that. To be an example, like it's not so much of changing budgets and getting the programs implemented. We have programs and resources. It's a matter of everybody supporting it, everybody getting on board in every action you do throughout your day, 9 to 5, the person you work with next to you in a cubicle, the person you work with in a job site, everywhere you go, make it intentional, make it a habit to look at them, acknowledge them, check on them. And if you are busy and you're running through your day just scrambling, a simple smile, a hold the door. That's it. That's all it takes sometimes to really break up the monotony that somebody else is going through. And I really feel that our community could really set an example to the state, nation, and other states that we support people in that capacity. But we also want to show our example of kindness doesn't cost anything. Just being a good neighbor doesn't cost anything.
How do you think GT Bynum handled the Greenwood situation?
I take a lot of flack on this, on both sides really of this issue, because I try to stay completely open-minded about stuff. And when I say that, I mean, even though I may vote Republican, and I used to be Democrat from the time I graduated high school all the way up till my mid-30s. So speaking on party lines, I'm saying I keep very open-minded about the way I see politics. I don't believe everything the media is telling me, because I know it's not all true. The way Bynum handled Greenwood, I think essentially in its basis was good. I think the Black Lives Matter mural and all that, zero effect on my life, zero effect on your life. It didn't hurt anybody. This is generally an area that is Black businesses, which always used to be historically and still is. There's a lot of Black businesses right there. I feel, anytime, and I've said this before, as far as racism goes, when you have to add a color to something, you're keeping racism alive. And just to speak of a culture, Black, white, whatever, it doesn't do any good for anyone to continue to just label. We need to understand each other as human beings, and that's it. If we want to talk culture with another human being who's of another color, then we talk that culture, but that doesn't always have to be a stigma or a label. So with the Black Lives Matter thing, I don't support that organization, period, because I don't, and we hear a lot of this in the media. I just don't support what you see on the page. I don't see their agenda as being something I am aligned with. That being said, I 100% support every person of color, anywhere, any shape or form. You can be my neighbor, doesn't matter. I love you. You're family to me. That's it. And that's how it always should be, your neighbors and everybody. The way Bynum handled that situation with the mural thing, and just in general, I don't think he did bad. And I think the way it ended up, from what I understand researching, is that street was going to be repaved. So kind of it fell into a thing where, bad timing to put a mural there. Had they waited till it was repaved and knew there was a project to repave it, we'd still have a mural probably. Whether it was going to be taxpayer money removing it again. But here's how I feel about that whole situation and every mural that gets put up. I understand the concept of if one organization does it, every organization is going to start doing it. And I think that's kind of silly that another organization would try to one up somebody. However, I don't see that mural bothers me one bit. We have in Tulsa in general, we have a lot of huge, awesome graffiti artists in Tulsa. If you drive downtown, you'll see some of it's art and some of it's just, not. But we have a lot of really good artists in Tulsa. And I don't think there's a problem with having a mural or having something that can be maybe voted on legally to be put in place in that community in Greenwood. I don't see any reason why they can't have that. If that's what they as a whole vote for in that area, in that community, or business owners and citizens of that area want it in that district. The Black Lives Matter murals, they don't bother me one bit. If it's not causing a problem for traffic and it's not causing a problem for local businesses and citizens, I don't see why some paint on the ground is hurting anyone. As far as the overall tail end of how Bynum kind of swapped out, at the beginning it was like, we're going to let him do it, and I think he sent a mixed signal by doing so. That's where I kind of catch flack a lot. Is I feel like while the mural did nothing to hurt anyone, at the end of the day, I feel that by him not addressing it and nipping it in the bud immediately up front, and then now here we are months later, and he's saying, well, we're going to pave over it. It's not allowed. The council voted on it. You're sending a mixed message to the voters. You're sending a mixed message to the community, and you're sending a mixed message to the Black Lives Matter supporters. Because what you're saying is, while we support your cause, you're still held back. In a nutshell, that's what you're saying to them. You're still getting cut off at the tail end. Versus at the beginning, just like a child who's acting up, do you wait 2 hours for your child to throw a hissy fit and act with bad behavior, or do you address it at the point it's happening? And not to, that's kind of a bad analogy, but at the end of the day, it's true. Do you nip something in the bud right away, or do you let it go to the point where it's become a problem and then more problems arise from it, which is how I see it now. So his initial base of saying, we're going to allow this, at the time was great. Okay. Yeah. Support the fact that these people are pissed off. Support the fact that they're angry and they want this in their community. Okay, that's fine. You can say that in the moment, but give them a 24-hour, 48-hour, 72-hour. This is how long we're going to allow this to go on with your protest. Or if you hold a permit, a lot of states and cities have permitting for protests. You see these protests going on around the nation, and a lot of places don't have permitting. You should have an event organizer and permitting in place for every major city, so that when these things go on, we can put a mural on the street during the course of the expiration of our permit. As soon as that permit's up, it's our responsibility to fix the property damaged. That's it. That's how it should work. But by letting it go on for several months and then taking a reverse stance on it, I think he did a disservice to himself, the community, and their organization. And I feel like at that point, when you let it go that far, I know there's certain laws and stipulations, like even on land where, like, or even say automotive shops that hold a property that a customer didn't pay for a period of time, they own it. You could almost say, well, they left the mural on the ground that long, the city didn't do anything, it should stay. And that's a crazy perspective, but that's the millions of different ways I'm viewing and looking at the topic. I don't think it's a problem for the mural to stay there myself. I think Bynum doing what he did at the tail end of it and saying, nah, at this time, this is what the city says, so we're going to stick by that. And I agree with them. Otherwise, everyone's going to want to do this. Sure, because we're in the land of the free, and people should be able to voice their opinions, and they should be able to express themselves, but they should also be able to do it through the city in a normal way. And as a taxpayer, that's what I would want to see. If they want that mural there, like I said, I 100% support that. If they want a mural or some kind of artwork that supports their cause or that community of Greenwood, I'm for it. Go ahead and do it, but get it passed. Let's do it the right way, so that we don't have 100 different organizations start smearing paint all over our streets.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you allow something that probably is going to be divisive, that the media is going to use to divide the community, is it beneficial long term? I mean, there's already murals down there. There's already a park down there. There's already a museum being built down there. No one has a problem with any of that stuff.
Yep.
But when you allow something that is going to be divisive, and then you kind of play into it a little bit, as he did,
Yes.
How is it beneficial to the community long term? It's not, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think, again, there's so many other issues in our world. And I'm not taking away from the injustices that the Black culture and community is feeling. I'm not taking away from what happened to George Floyd, what happened to these other people. At the end of the day, what happened to these people is under circumstances of being in a horrible situation, period. First and foremost, you're in a situation or you're at a point in your life where you're, whether you're doing drugs, you're doing an illegal activity or whatever, you're putting yourself in a position to be confronted by law enforcement. And at the time you put yourself in a position to be confronted with law enforcement, um, there's two ways that can go. You can be not doing anything wrong. They get their information. You go about your business. You're on your way. Or you're a criminal. You're breaking the law. All criminals know, and I don't care how young they are, and I don't care how. I've heard it before. People say, well, they didn't know what they were doing. Listen, we've been from kindergarten on. We know what cops do. They enforce the law, and all of us know when an officer shows up, is called for a criminal activity. There's two ways that goes. They either investigates and finds criminal activity and someone gets arrested and they catch someone, or they don't. And when you're a criminal, I've said it before on my show. If you're a criminal and the officer pulls up and you're cornered and you're caught, don't shoot back. Don't resist arrest. Don't. And I hear a lot of people say, well, he didn't follow the officer's orders. Listen, that's the job of the officer. To make that choice of this escalated to a level where my life was threatened, the guy pulled a gun, is there things in the police department that could be changed? Yes. But what people aren't talking about is that the police departments on a daily basis are being briefed and changed. Their protocols, everything that goes on within a police department changes daily. Officers have to look at new protocols and new procedures daily. There's always changes in police departments. I don't know any police department that's sitting like Sanford and Son or Barney Fife still in 2020. There's none, because they all have had to look at their procedures in their community. And as their communities grew, they've had to make changes. And so, my message has always been, first off, don't put yourself in positions where you're having a police officer come in defensively. And you definitely don't want a police officer coming in offensively. And then that's as simple as just not breaking the law. And for those that are going to continue to break the law, I feel like as a society, we've kind of put them on a pedestal, like it's okay to break the law. And then as long as the media comes in, we're going to make you a martyr. And I think that's where we're failing ourselves, because we don't need to be putting criminals in a position where they're getting more fortune and fame for their behavior, because then we're reinforcing the behavior. We're reinforcing them being a career criminal. I don't believe in that. I believe that there is officers that show up on scenes and things happen. There's an example is the guy in Texas that shot the Texas guy. That one just came to mind. That officer's being charged. They found evidence that says that officer broke procedure and broke protocol. Okay, that officer's charged. I 100% support and back the blue. I think our officers do a great job keeping us safe. I pray that they continue to, and I think that for us to take away funding from them could potentially set us up for them not having the training to do the right thing at the right moment. While I don't believe they need to be militarized and have every freaking crazy gun and weapon in the world, I do believe they need to have whatever's in place for training. They have to and need to have it if it's going to save their lives or save the community's life. But at the same time, I feel if an officer is found guilty of a crime, a loss of life, they broke a protocol where someone died that should not have died. And I always say a criminal should never die. Okay. A criminal, if their choice is to shoot back, if their choice is to resist arrest to the point of they lose their life, that's something for a court to decide. That's why we have the courts. But there should never be a point where a criminal doesn't make it to jail safely and healthy. There's no point where a criminal shouldn't make it to jail to be prosecuted at all, no matter what the circumstances is, unless the person puts their life out there and threatens the life of officers and community, which is the job of the officer to stop. But I do feel that if an officer breaks procedure and breaks law, just as you or I do, so in other words, there's a call, something comes up, he didn't follow protocol, and the person or suspect or the person they're investigating dies due to him shooting them, or him taking their life in some way that did not follow proper protocol. I feel there should not be laws protecting that man. I feel that man should be held to the same account of justice as if you or I took that life. And I think that would set a higher standard in the police departments. I think that's a good way to rule out bad cops, is they know if they're going to be a bad cop, they're facing the same justice as you and I out here are. And I think that would be a good start and a good discussion to have. You know, it also, you know, my brother's in law enforcement. I have a lot of friends in law enforcement. You know, I've heard about the Code of Blue. I've heard about these guys backing each other up. My brother's laughed about it several times to me, you know, about how, you know, one of his friends did something to a suspect, and, you know, once the report went in and it went to court and they stuck up for him. And I get it. I get that brotherhood, but it's not right. It's not, we're in 2020. It's not right that somebody, the fugitive in his life is affected, and his family's life is, who's having to send him money in prison and all this stuff, if something wasn't done properly. So there is things where we can implement and maybe oversee what's going on with these cases. But I also feel our justice system fails us in the fact that it no longer handles cases on an individual basis. Our justice system fails us where we have judges, and I understand our dockets are full. I understand as we get into bigger society, it's hard to handle all these cases. But if we can't handle cases on an individual basis, and we're just doing a blanket statement of this is what this guy got a DUI, everybody gets, and with DUIs gets this. This guy murdered, this is what everybody that murders gets. This is this. If you start blanket coding things, you're not looking at facts. You're really, you're giving the court and the prosecutor as well as the defense attorney an opportunity to miss something and either neglect facts, or maybe not implement a punishment that's fair enough or strict enough. And so I do see where we need, it's not just the police department, that our justice system's what's failing. You see, you know, like here in Tulsa, for prime example, we see these drug addicts and meth dealers, and we see these rapists and child molesters. They get back on the street every 5 minutes. You know, as fast as Lori Fulbright can put a report up about somebody being arrested, you'll see their second arrest post in a month. And you're like,
that in Hawaii too, so I think it's
it's all over. It's all over, but it's just like, that's where our justice system kind of fails us. There has to be a point where you know, yes, our laws need. I hear a lot of people talk about getting our laws less strict. I don't agree with that. But I don't agree with just locking everybody up under one accord. You know, you get a DUI your first time, it's, let's say, 1 to 5 years. All of a sudden, everybody's getting 1 to 5. When you know, there can be circumstances around everything. And while, you know, I'm not going to condone drinking and driving, you know, we know there's problems with breathalyzers. We know analyzing the blood test is really the best way for all that stuff. So I just feel like our justice system, there's so many dynamics that can change there that would help officers in the field. And at the end of the day, the real message is, you know, if you're a criminal and you know you're a criminal, you know the consequences, which is you're going to get caught. And when you do get caught, understand that the worst you can get is going to jail. Nobody wants to go to jail, but if you're a criminal, you know that's what you're doing and that's going to get you there. So why fight back? Just cuff up. Just go to jail. Stop, you know, go to jail. And if you still want to be a criminal and you get out of that sentence, go be a criminal again and get caught again. I'm not encouraging it, but I'm just saying that's kind of where we need to be with everything. It's a severe injustice when people are dying at police officers' hands. However, it's not as the media is portraying it. And I think we're taking away from all of the good that police departments do and officers do in our communities. Prime example, I love our new chief here in Tulsa. So this guy walked into a mess. And from the second he walked into the mess, he's acted. He's taken his stance. I would just assume, and I don't know him, but I would assume it's taken him quite a long time to filter through what he needs to filter through to clean up Tulsa, and then also run it the way he needs it ran. And I'll be honest, every time I've seen him in a press conference, when he handled the small protester riot that happened at 71st, he came on the news and he admitted, he said, we didn't have a plan. That's why it kind of went south there for a second, and we called in the National Guard. We just didn't have a plan. We could not flank them enough. And then finally it lasted until 3 a.m. where they pushed him down 71st with the National Guard. But I love his honesty. I love his transparency. I love the fact that he'll go in a press conference and he'll admit that he was wrong or made a mistake, or that it was better procedure he could have followed that would have helped make this opportunity or situation better. So far, everything I've heard him say community-wise has been positive and upbeat. Um, I have a lot of respect for this new chief, and I look forward to seeing how he can work with the local community on our obviously our hottest topic, which is, you know, police departments and the community, or as a whole in Black culture, and defunding the police thing. I think he's going to set a good precedent. I mean, I feel really good about what he can do in the future.
Now, as we're kind of winding down this interview, maybe you could talk about what your plans are as far as going forward with your show.
Yeah, for sure. You know, right now, I've got a lot of different ideas and plans. When I first started researching podcasting to do my talk show, I thought, you know, the thing I kept running into is everybody has a topic. You're supposed to have a show that has some sort of a framework and puts you in a box, and it says that box, and what the stereotypical world of podcast has told us all is that you have to talk about a certain thing. So you have to have a business show, or otherwise you have to get another podcast and have a technology show, and I didn't want to stay in that box. I opened the lid of the box and I crawled out and I said, no, we're going to do everything. I want to talk news. I want to talk politics. I want to talk sports. I want to talk technology. I want it all. And that was where I was like, at first I couldn't wrap my head around, like, what topic am I going to pick? What do I want to be, business or this, and I don't want to be in the box. So the future for Two Party Podcast, and hopefully for me, is I'd like to be able to push in a direction that continues to use the platform for good, to help. And I don't want to just, you know, we talked about it earlier. I mean, I've booked a lot of guests all the way through November for interviews, and I'm starting to get to the structured area where now I can start just doing releases, which gives me a little bit of a break time, so I can release different interviews. And while that's good, and it frees up a little of my time, what I really want to be able to do, besides just guest interviews, I want to be able to bring some of the best guests that represent their industry or their career, or the topics that are supposed to put us in a box. So I'd like to have the best in business, the best in technology, the best in acting, the best in this. And that's what I want to do in the future. And in order to do that, I don't want to lose track of, or my main focus, which is helping other people. Because if I'm just going to bring guests on and show a guest and have a guest each time, and I'm losing the focus on how is this guest helping my audience, then if I'm just going to start doing it as a routine of putting a guest on and hoping the audience cares, I'm losing my own focus of the direction of where the show should go. So I try to get guests that are, I'm able to showcase what they do and how they help. And some of them I had 2 interviews last week, where I mentioned that that's what we're doing right now, is talking about helping others this next 30 days with mental health awareness. And a few of them said, well, I don't know where I help people. And I was like, you just wrote a book on self-improvement. You just wrote a book on business and marketing. You just wrote, that's where you help. And they were like, oh yeah. And they kind of opened up out of their, like, you know, scripted interview. And they were like, well, yeah, I guess I do help people. And that's where I'm hoping the platform helps the guests kind of see where they are doing good, where they may not recognize it, giving them that platform to showcase themselves, but also giving them a point where they can look in the mirror and say, wow, I'm either doing good or I'm not with what I do in my life. And at the same time, I hope that this platform can always be an opportunity for our local Tulsa businesses. We talked about a little bit messaging each other about some of the gyms and stuff through the pandemic. You know, you got a lot of these fight gyms and a lot of these, there's a lot of, you know, small business, brick and mortar, and small business people that run it out of their home. But some of these gyms, I don't think people understand. I boxed for many years. I boxed for about 8 years, South Tulsa, it was Cultus Gym in South Tampa, down in Florida. I boxed out of that gym for many years. Antonio Tarver was his trainer. Jimmy Williams was one of the trainers that helped me become a better boxer before he was training for Roy Jones. I have been around, I love fight sports. I love boxing and I love fight sports. I don't watch really anything else, hockey, and that's it. I don't keep up with football, none of that stuff. But what people don't understand, and I know from growing up, those gyms, boxing gyms, MMA, jiu-jitsu, karate, taekwondo, all those things are community pillars for children. I can't express more how my journey through boxing in South Tampa changed me from going down a road that was probably going to lead me to prison for life. And I think it's really important we show support for all gyms and all these. One of my neighbors was my son's wrestling coach, Team Tulsa wrestling. That's where my son learned to wrestle. Amazing. They did a great job with him in a short amount of time to get him to understand the basics and the fundamentals. But what I noticed the most is what it did for his confidence, his self-esteem. And now he's doing jiu-jitsu with Omar French, and he loves it there. And it's like family there. But what I see is you have a lot of kids from a lot of different backgrounds and broken homes. And while I see parents come, the mom comes and drops the kid, she has to leave because the father's not allowed near her, and she picks the kid up. The grandmother comes. I mean, there's things going on in people's lives we don't know. And these gyms we need to support because they support our community. So on that note, I'm hoping the show continues to be a platform to help these type of businesses. To continue to offer for free advertising and sponsorship. In the future, of course, we're going to have sponsorship packages. We have to make a little bit of money in order to cover costs and time. That's not something I'm unaware of. And in reality, it should be that way. But at the end of the day, we're always going to have a spot for local business. I'm always going to offer, there's not going to be a point where every person that calls me has to pay. I always want to have an opportunity to use Two Party Podcasts to let people promote their business, share their ideas and talents free of charge. And that's really my goal is if I can continue to use the platform for good to help not just our local community, but then the states and then around the world. We're heard all over around the world. For some reason, when we first started out, my biggest audience was in India. Who knew? I had a lot of people in India reaching out to me. And the funny thing is they were reaching out because the pandemic's so bad there. They just hit yesterday, I think they hit 100 and something. Their death toll is not as high as ours, but they're like at 7 million positives and still going up. And it's, that's not a very big country. A lot of people think of a different country like it's a size of us. It's not. So to have that many people in that small of a space and they're all testing out positive, it's kind of crazy. So I had a lot of them reach out that way. And again, same thing. I offered to help. Like, what can I do to help? Well, spread the word that we're having an issue here. And I did. And I keep talking about them. But I really hope that in the future for me, I can continue forward making great relationships with people like you. I can continue making great relationships with local business owners. And ways where we can get together as a group, like I did with the Unity Social. We did an event down there free of charge. Business owners didn't have to pay us for vending seats and booths. And I hope in the future to get together with more people and collaborate where we can do a huge event where we're all just kind of footing the bill to help the community and build it. And that's really the goal for me and the show.
And where can people kind of find your projects?
You can kind of find us everywhere. I'm a little scattered right now, and I admit it, because, being so new into this, I'm really finding my footing, and I'm really trying to find the best places where my audience, through analytics and insights, I'm really trying to find the best place to reach the audience I have. Currently, you can find us at Two Party Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, social, any of the social media sites, Twitter, Instagram. We're on Anchor, SoundCloud, Soundtrap, Podchaser, Twitch. There's not many. I'm working with Bandcamp and CD Baby right now. We're working on getting all of our episodes on a CD format. I've already sent off for all the copywriting craziness. I didn't realize when I started this, Todd, that it gets a little crazy when you're really starting to get this stuff put together on a more professional format. So, I've had to go through the federal board to get everything copywritten. I'm working on getting everything so that it's completely running on its own, but I'm working to get a CD and disc out soon that just has our first episodes, our first major interviews on it. And a lot of people don't use CDs anymore. The ones that do will offer it, but we will also have like a digital download copy. So we're working on that right now. That's something a project I've really been working in the studio on. But you can find us at the number 2partypodcast.com. anybody that businesses that hear this, anybody that wants to reach out and be a guest, I encourage you just to reach me at my Gmail, which is twopartypodcast@gmail.com. You can message me on any of the platforms you find us on. If you search Two Party Podcast, you should be able to find us. And if you don't, email me and let me know so I can get on the platform you use. And that's what I've been telling all my guests is if you're not finding me in your searches, tell me where you're searching so I can get on that platform. And we are in negotiation right now with iHeart and Pandora trying to get on there. It takes a little longer negotiating with them to get our show on there because they're looking for the Joe Rogans. They're looking for the people that are number ones because that's the audience they want to push to. So, while we're not, I think we're pushing over 1,000 plus consistent audience members, which is good for a first start and just a short time. I don't think we'll be hitting the numbers that Joe Rogan and them are anytime soon. But as long as we have a base that of people that support us, we'll always support them.
Well, iHeart let me on, so you'll probably be all right.
That's what I'm waiting. I'm waiting to hear back, and it's been a process. And they're like, yeah, well, you should hear from us within 30 days. And I'm like, well, we'll just hang tight then.
They haven't kicked me off yet.
There you go.
Well, Dan, I want to thank you for coming on, and hopefully catch up with you sometime soon down the road.
For sure. And I'll have you, like I'd like to do is have you on our show as well. And that way we can discuss a little bit about you and your show locally and what you guys are doing for the community.
For sure. I'd love that.
Awesome. Well, you have a great day.
You too. Take care. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.